Hello, and welcome to the webinar for Key Action 1 Mobility Funding in the field of vocational education and training under the 2018 call. So just to give you an overview of what this recording covers, I'll start by giving you a quick introduction to the Key Action 1 Mobility for vet learners and staff and what funding is available. Then I'll be looking at the PIC process, followed by what is new in the 2018 call application forms, as there have been some key changes that you will need to know about. Then the main focus of the session will be the application form itself. We will go through the key sections of the application form together, filling out certain parts, showing you how to use the distance calculator and how to validate the form. Then we will round up the key points. Finally, we'll mention the next steps and how to contact us for support in the run-up to the deadline. As we go through the presentation, there will be time for you to ask questions. Any specific questions about your proposal should, however, be directed to the Erasmus Plus helpline either by telephone or email. These details will be given to you at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's find out if any of you are new to the application for Erasmus Plus Key Action 1 Vet. Please select yes if you have applied before and no if you have not. Okay, once again, have you applied for Erasmus Plus funding under Key Action 1 Vet before? Either yes or no. Okay, I believe we're going to close the poll now. And we'll also show the results for you now. Here we go. So the results were as follows. So yes is 55% and no 45%. So pretty even at this moment in time. Before we begin, I would like to briefly provide you with an update on the Erasmus Plus programme in terms of Brexit. The National Agency for Erasmus Plus in the UK remains wholly committed to the Erasmus Plus programme and its benefits. The National Agency strongly supports continued full membership of the programme for the UK through to 2020, as planned, under the proposed Brexit implementation period, so that at least 250,000 people across the UK have the chance to study, train or volunteer abroad, and that UK organisations can continue to collaborate on international projects. The UK continues to be a full member of the EU until the point it leaves, as stated in the Prime Minister's letter triggering Article 50, which says that we will of course continue to fulfil our responsibilities as a member state while we remain a member of the European Union. The European Commission and European Parliament have confirmed that during negotiations under Article 50, European Union treaties and law continue to apply to the UK, and this applies to projects financed through Erasmus+. We've been working closely with the UK National Authority, the Department for Education, to ensure that accurate information on Erasmus Plus activity in the UK is provided to the UK government. The National Agency has a mandate to cover all sectors of the programme and will continue to liaise with the UK government to ensure that higher education, vocational education and training, schools, adult education and youth activities are represented equitably. The UK government has stated publicly that, subject to successful negotiations, the United Kingdom will continue to benefit from Erasmus Plus until the end of the current programme in 2020. It will underwrite successful bids for Erasmus Plus funding that are submitted while the UK is still a member state, even if they are not approved until after we leave and/or payments continue beyond the point of exit. UK organisations wishing to apply for funding in 2018 should prepare for participation as usual ahead of the 2018 application deadlines. More information is available on the UK National Agency Erasmus Plus Brexit webpage at www.erasmusplus.org.uk/Brexit-update. So, Key Action 1 in the field of vet for learner and staff mobilities. Key Action 1 provides opportunities for individuals to improve their skills, enhance their employability, and gain cultural awareness through transnational mobility. Under Key Action 1, organisations can apply for funding to offer structured study, work experience, job shadowing, training and teaching opportunities for staff and learners. In the VET sector, both learners and staff in vocational education and training, which I'll call VET going forward, can participate in mobility activities. As a basic overview, funding can be used to support apprentices and VET students who are undertaking vocational training within a VET organisation. This also includes recent graduates who have completed their VET qualification, including apprentices who have recently completed their apprenticeship. In respect of staff, funding can be used for support staff engaged in VET activities, including support staff, managers and guidance staff, as well as teachers and trainers working in the sending organisation. VET learners or apprentices involved in initial VET or IVET, or VET staff trainers involved in continuing VET or CVET, can undertake their mobility abroad in either a VET college or school, a company, or a combination of both, depending on their needs. IVET includes full-time students, part-time students, and anyone undertaking an apprenticeship, whereas CVET includes staff or trainers involved in any form of vocational education or training with the aim of improving or updating their knowledge and skills, or enabling participants to continue their professional development. Projects can be made up of both learner mobility and staff mobility, but you must demonstrate how the two activities fit with the wider objectives of the project. Key Action 1 Mobility for VET learners and staff is managed by the UK National Agency at Ecorus UK, which means we at Ecorus UK promote the call for proposals, select successful projects, and monitor them throughout their life cycle. Specific to VET staff, there are opportunities for two main types of mobility activity. The first is teaching training assignments, where staff deliver training in a VET organisation abroad. This also encompasses hosting a trainer or teacher from a partner organisation to deliver structured training at the applicant organisation or its consortium partners. You can also have staff from your European partner organisation come to the UK under this activity type, so you can host them. The second activity type is staff training. Staff undertake a work placement or job shadowing experience in an enterprise or any other VET organisation abroad. In the case of teaching training assignments, Key Action 1 is open to persons from enterprises, public sector and/or civil society organisations, as well as the typical target group of VET trainers, managers and support staff. The training must respond to clearly identified staff development or training needs, or must contribute to your organisation's strategic approach on making your training provision more modern or international. The learning outcomes of the training must also be appropriately recognised and shared widely with others in your organisation. Staff mobility activities can last from 2 days to 2 months, excluding travel time, and must be consecutive. Now let's look into opportunities for learners in a bit more detail. Specific to learners, the funding can be used to support apprentices and VET students enrolled on an IVET programme within a VET organisation. Apprentices or vocational students who have recently completed their apprenticeship or course, i.e. VET graduates, can also benefit from this opportunity as long as they undertake their training placement within 12 months of their graduation. The placement must include work-based learning at a VET organisation, employer or other relevant organisation. Vocational study alone is not permitted. To ensure the quality of the placement, it is recommended that receiving organisation hosts all or part of the vocational placement rather than sorting it out to another organisation. The placement must be relevant to and fit well with the course that the student or apprentice is studying. It is important to note that in the Erasmus Plus programme, vocational learners are defined as those whose studies typically include work-based learning. Higher education students are not eligible to benefit from Key Action 1 VET mobilities and should access Erasmus Plus through the higher education mobility projects. If you are unsure if your planned cohort or participants would be eligible under Key Action 1 VET, please contact the National Agency for support. Learning outcomes should also be formally recognised through the use of ECVET, Europass, or through any other means that is appropriate to the target learners. This year, mobilities for learners are split between short-term and long-term mobilities, which I will talk more about in the What's New for 2018 section of this presentation. Please be aware, however, that a mobility placement must last a minimum of 2 weeks or 12 days, of which 10 must be working days, and a maximum of 12 months, excluding travel time. Now, a few words on accompanying persons. As part of the European Commission's drive to improve the quality of mobility experiences and safeguard vulnerable learners, it is compulsory to include accompanying persons for VET learner mobility projects. This means that each flow of learners must receive a visit from an accompanying person at some point during their mobility. This ensures that learners are properly monitored while on mobility and that any potential issues are picked up. We recommend that you include a minimum of one accompanying person per 10 learners. Accompanying persons can also accompany a single learner for the duration of their mobility, for example, if the learner has special needs. Accompanying persons are also allowed for staff mobility activities if a staff member has special needs. However, the inclusion of an accompanying person within a staff mobility must be fully explained in the application form. It is important to note that Erasmus Plus funding cannot be accessed by individuals, so an organisation must apply on behalf of the participants it plans to include in the project. For your Key Action 1 VET application to be eligible, you must have at least one receiving partner, and you must list all of the proposed partners, receiving and intermediary organisations as applicable in the application form, as partners cannot be added at a later date. There are various roles that participating organisations play in the implementation of a VET learner and staff mobility project. I will outline these and the responsibilities that each one should undertake. Firstly, the applicant organisation. This organisation is in charge of applying for the mobility project and, if this is successful, signing and managing the grant agreement and reporting. The applicant can be a single organisation or the coordination of a national mobility consortium or partner organisations from the same country, aimed at sending VET learners and staff on mobilities abroad. The National Mobility Consortium Coordinator can also act as a sending organisation. Sending organisation. In charge of selecting VET learners, staff, and sending them abroad. This can be the applicant organisation or its partners in a UK consortium, as I mentioned just now. Receiving organisation is in charge of receiving foreign VET learners, staff, and offering them a programme of activities or benefiting from a training activity provided by VET staff. We recommend that your receiving organisations host all or part of the placement, as in that way you can better ensure the quality of the training which takes place abroad. If your receiving partner is hosting no part of the vocational placement, you should provide details on their suitable experience and expertise, as well as their links to businesses, industry, or training institutions. Finally, an intermediary organisation is one active in the labour market or in the field of VET. It is a partner in a national VET consortium, but is not a sending or receiving organisation. Its role may be to share and facilitate the administrative procedures of the sending VET organisations and to better match apprentice or student profiles with the needs of enterprises and to jointly prepare participants. It is important to link your Key Action 1 project to the overarching European priorities and show the added value of carrying out your project on a European level. When doing so, it is important to keep the general objective of the Erasmus Plus programme in mind, as well as the important features of the programme. The general objectives of Erasmus Plus are to contribute to a number of policies, which are those you can see on this slide, and include the Europe 2020 strategy, including the headline education target, the strategic framework for European cooperation in education and training, ET 2020, the sustainable development of partner countries in the field of higher education, the renewed framework for European cooperation in the youth field, 2010 to 2018, the objective of developing the European dimension in sport, in particular grassroots sport, in line with the EU Work Plan for Sport, and the promotion of European values in accordance with Article 2 of the Treaty on the European Union, which include human dignity, freedom, democracy, and equality. More details regarding objectives and important features of Erasmus Plus are detailed in Part A of the Programme Guide and include recognition of skills and multilingualism. Please look through them carefully in your own time. Please also have a look at the specific objectives for the field of education and training on page 30 of the Programme Guide. So now that we've run through an overview of Key Action 1 VET, we would like to find out which subjects you are most interested in and that you have the most questions about. Okay, so which subjects do you want to know the most about? The PIC process, what's new in 2018, the application form, activities detail section, or budget? Once again, which subject do you want to know about the most? The PIC process, what's new in 2018, the application form, activities detail section, or the budgets? Okay, and the results are as follows. For the PIC process, it's 0%. For what's new in 2018, it is 68%. For the application form, activities detail section, it's 32%, and also the budget is 0% as well. So these areas we'll be covering further within the presentation today. And remember, as we go through the presentation, you can ask questions to my colleagues Carmina and Nikki, and they will try to answer them via the chat facility. So now I'm going to be covering some information on the steps to take before you apply, namely regarding the PIC process, as we get many queries about this. In order to apply for Erasmus Plus funding, the applicant organisation must have a Participant Identification Code, or PIC, and must also ensure that its partner organisations have PICs. The PIC is a 9-digit Participant Identification Code which is unique to your organisation and will help you complete the application form. If you haven't got a PIC, you need to complete 2 registration steps, but please double check that the organisation definitely doesn't have a PIC. We'd recommend you ask colleagues at your organisation in case someone else has already created a PIC. Alternatively, you can check whether your organisation is already registered through your EU login account by clicking on the Organisation tab from the drop-down menu and using the search facility, or online using the link in the chat box. If your organisation already has a PIC, you should use that one and not create a new one, as having 2 or more PICs for the same organisation will create problems. If you do need to create a PIC, first you will need to create an account on EU Login. This platform of the European Commission was formerly known as ECAS. EU Login is a point for user authentication to a wide range of Commission tools. The registration process is really simple, and you can download a guide on our website which will talk you through how to do this. Please go to our website page, Registering Your Organisation, where you can find the EU Login Guidance document, as well as the Participant Portal's user manual, which includes screenshots and step-by-step guidance to help you. You will then need to obtain a PIC through the Participant Portal, and again, the link to the portal is on our website. After starting the registration process, you will be prompted to provide information about your organisation, as well as upload documents related to your organisation. These documents are needed to prove the legal status and financial capacity of your organisation, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information you've inputted onto the portal. So if you already have a PIC, you can just forget about this whole process? Not really. You do not need to create a new PIC, however you need to log on to the portal and check that the details are up to date, and that they match exactly the details in the supporting documents that I will mention in a minute. In particular, you should ensure that the organisation address is a registered address and is accurate, because the UK National Agency will conduct all checks against this address. The email addresses should be accurate, and the contact telephone numbers for the applicant and, if applicable, the National Consortium members should be a UK contact number. Also, please be aware that all of your partners will also need to have obtained a PIC and have uploaded all of the necessary supporting documents onto the participant portal before you can submit your application. These are other common questions received about the PIC process. First question is, how can I check my institution's PIC? If you aren't sure of your institution's PIC, you can actually search via the Participants portal, following the hyperlink on our website and selecting Search from the Organisations tab. We are also frequently asked about what documents are needed to be uploaded, so as applicant you need to upload a completed legal entity form and also a financial identification form. Both may have to be accompanied by supporting documents. The legal entity form needs to have as a supporting document any document of incorporation or registration which proves the legal status of the organisation. The financial identification form may need to have as a supporting document a recent bank statement. Your partners also have to complete the legal entity form and upload it to the portal. If you have a VAT number, this should be on the PIC for your organisation and your VAT certificate uploaded onto the portal. A quick overview of the overall PIC process can be seen on this slide. Finally, if you want to apply as the coordinator of a national mobility consortium, you will also need to download the partner mandate templates from our website and have them filled in by each UK partner and signed by both parties. Please make sure that all the information, such as the name of the organisation, address, and legal representative on the partner mandate is identical to the information in the application form. Otherwise, the partner mandate will not be accepted. Okay, now we will take a couple of minutes to take any specific queries you may have about the PIC process within the questions box. Okay, so now we'll take a look at what's new within the 2018 application form. Some of you may be aware that the European Commission talked about implementing a web-based form for the 2018 call. In late December 2017, the European Commission advised that this would not be the case, therefore the eForm is still in PDF format. If you have applied in previous years, you will already be familiar with the process and the form. Changes have been made to the application form to reflect the updates in the 2018 programme guide. Please note that if you submitted a successful application in previous years, you are not guaranteed to be successful in 2018, and you should not complete the 2018 application with the exact same information as last year. You should review and update your application to take into account any feedback provided from your last application, information about new procedures in place to manage your project, and any new information on the need for the project with updated qualitative data where applicable. It's important to remember that the application process is very competitive and the quality of applications rises each year. So just because your application was successful last year, it does not mean it will be successful again in 2018. So before I show you the changes, I would like to point out that Adobe Reader and Adobe Reader DC are the only accepted readers for you to open the form. If you happen to use another reader such as Foxit or Adobe Acrobat X Pro, you will not be able to use the electronic form and may even corrupt it, with a message starting with, "Unable to read form, do not save and exit the program as it may cause data corruption or loss." The latest version, 15.20 of Adobe Acrobat Reader DC, is compatible with the eForm, and so is version 15.9 and 15.7 or earlier versions. However, please note that if you have downloaded Adobe Acrobat Reader DC version 2015.008 or 15.8, the eForm will not work properly. Therefore, you should not use version 2015.008 or 15.8 of Adobe Acrobat Reader DC. If you have looked at the 2018 Programme Guide, you will have noticed that the most significant change in relation to Key Action 1 VET surrounds the introduction of Erasmus Pro. This change impacts on the application form, as well as the assessment and selection of applications. Erasmus Pro is a policy initiative responding to calls from the European Parliament to increase the quality of VET and employability of VET learners through long-term mobility placements. I'd like to summarise the main changes in turn for you. Typology of learner mobility activities. In the 2018 call application form for VET mobility, instead of separating activity types according to the host organisation, VET providers and companies, the application now separates according to durations. Firstly, the mobility and VET providers and/or companies abroad from 2 weeks to less than 3 months, or that's 10 days and 89 days inclusive, plus 2 travel days. And number 2, long-term mobility and VET providers and/or companies abroad, Erasmus Pro, from 3 to 12 months. So that's 90 days and 366 days inclusive, plus 2 travel days. Advanced planning visits, APVs. For application forms which include Erasmus Pro activities, applicants can now request funding for advanced planning visits or an APV. These allow you to meet your host partner face-to-face to prepare the mobility together in order to facilitate inter-institutional cooperation, better prepare the mobilities and ensure their high quality, i.e. in order to arrange for logistics of Erasmus Pro mobilities. The eligibility criteria for these visits is outlined on page 52 of the 2018 Programme Guide. Important points to note include: the duration of a visit can be between 1 and a maximum of 3 working days, excluding travel days. And each APV is limited to 1 participant, i.e. 1 staff member only from the applicant organisation and per hosting organisation. The integration of long-term mobilities forms part of the quality criteria against which your application will be assessed under all 3 award criteria. Under relevance of the project, the extent to which the proposal integrates long-term mobility, Erasmus Pro. This gives priority to a project that has integrated Erasmus Pro mobilities in comparison to one that does not, assuming that the level of quality is the same between the 2 projects. Impact and dissemination. The extent to which the project promotes long-term mobility, Erasmus Pro, by developing sustainable cross-border cooperation and recognition structures. Further awards projects that implement Erasmus Pro in a sustainable way. Quality of the project in design and implementation. The clarity of planning and feasibility of implementation of long-term mobility, Erasmus Pro. Used to assess the quality of planned Erasmus Pro in terms of practical arrangements. Please see page 53 of the 2018 Programme Guide for this information. Similar to VET charter holder applications, Erasmus Pro will now also be given priority with regards to allocation of funds. National agencies will approve applications with Erasmus Pro activities as a priority. Therefore, projects, those that score over 60 and meet the thresholds in each assessment category, which include Erasmus Pro activities, will be prioritised for funding. If you include long-term mobilities in your proposal, you should take care to highlight how such mobilities will be managed. For example, how participants will be prepared, monitored and mentored for the longer mobility duration, as opposed to participants on a short-term mobility of less than 3 months. For example, the recruitment and selection of participants for a long-term mobility would need to be considered to ensure participants are mature enough to undertake a mobility for the duration. Also, a participant on a long-term mobility may require more detailed preparation than a participant on a mobility of 2 to 3 weeks, where an accompanying person will be present. An accompanying person cannot be present for the duration of the mobility. Therefore, how will the participants be monitored? Further support and guidance is provided within the Key Action 1 VET Guide for Applicants on our website. If we take the budget section in the application form, changes have been made in line with changes within the 2018 Programme Guide. I'm going to go through the main changes now. For travel, under the travel budget heading, the funding for distances of 8,000 kilometres or more has been increased from a unit cost of €1,300 to €1,500. For exceptional costs, last year beneficiaries were able to request funding under the budget heading Top Up for Expensive Domestic Travel. Also, under exceptional costs, beneficiaries could claim for travel costs of participants from or to outermost regions and overseas countries and territories. These have now been merged and placed under the exceptional cost budget as expensive travel costs of participants. You can claim up to a maximum of 80% of the total eligible costs. However, you will need to justify that the standard funding rules, based on contribution to unit costs per travel distance band, do not cover at least 70% of the travel costs of participants for this to be an eligible cost. Justification must be provided within the application form. There is room for you to provide the justification at the end of the budget section in the form. You should bear in mind that assessors can reduce the amount of exceptional costs requested if the request is considered too large or a clear justification has not been provided. You must therefore provide detailed justifications for any request for exceptional costs. You should provide a breakdown of the exceptional costs requested as much as possible. For individual support, there have been changes to the unit costs per country, which are now set into 3 groups instead of 4, so there are now only 3 different unit costs. Please see page 74 of the 2018 Programme Guide for more details. As Erasmus Pro is geared toward long-term mobilities for graduates and apprentices in particular, I want to quickly highlight to you a network called Euro Apprentices. Euro Apprentices is a network of Erasmus Plus funded apprentices and learners on VET work-based learning schemes established by national agencies in Austria, Czech Republic, Germany, Denmark, Finland and Italy. The purpose is, firstly, to give an apprenticeship an individual face and a personal story by allowing apprentices to come together during annual run transnational cooperation activities, or TCA events, to talk about their experience of learning abroad and its benefit for personal and professional development, and also to disseminate their individual success stories in their own countries. The second point is to increase the visibility of the Erasmus Plus programme, mobility of apprentices, and the attractiveness of VET. The network is inspired by the Euro Peers network in the youth sector. The European network started with a TCA event in Germany in June 2017, and the second Euro Apprentices Network meeting is scheduled for June 2018 in Austria. In 2018, the UK National Agency will be looking for 5 UK apprentices who have taken part in Erasmus Plus Mobilities to share their experience at the next Euro Apprentices meeting. This will be promoted through our e-newsletter, so please sign up to the newsletter on our website if you have not already done so, and start thinking about apprentices that may be suitable for the event. So does anyone have any questions on the application form and the new sections or features ruled as outlined in the webinar, or that you may have noticed from the 2018 Erasmus Plus Programme Guide? Okay, so now we'll take a look at the 2018 application form. The application form is an electronic PDF form, which we'll call an eForm going forward. The eForm will need to be submitted online by the applicant organisation by the deadline of 1st of February 2018. Please keep in mind that this is 11 a.m. UK time, as the deadline for applications is 12 p.m. Brussels time. The application form is available to download from the Apply for Vet Learner and Staff Mobility Funding page on the Erasmus Plus website under Key Action 1. You should save the form as a PDF to your computer. I'll demonstrate this to you now. So here we go. So this is the Erasmus Plus UK National Agency website. So the menu button in the top left-hand corner here, if you click on there, scroll down to apply for funding, and the menu opens up to the right. So move across to vocational education and training funding, and once again it scrolls out to the right, and you need the top option there, applying for learner and staff mobility funding. So if you click on that link, all the resources are available on the right-hand side of the web page. So as I scroll down, here we go. The application e-form is located here under the blue highlight. 2018 application e-form for vet learner and staff mobility. You click on the link, you'll give the option to open or save. So I will save this to the desktop. And from there you should be able to open the application form. Okay, you will have to have Adobe Reader installed onto your computer in order to be able to access the eForm. Just to make you aware, some Mac computers are not compatible with the eForm, so we would recommend that where possible you use a computer running Windows to complete the application form. To make sure you're working on the correct Key Action 1 application form, you should check the errors you can see on this slide. On the top right-hand corner of each page, the form will state 2018 as the core year and Key Action 102 as the action type, which is vet learner and staff mobility. So I'll highlight with my cursor there. This is the section here. Then on the first page in section B, the correct eForm will state that the key action is learning mobility of individuals. Then again, the action type, the core year as 2018, the round will be round number 1, and the submission deadline will be the 1st of February 2018 at noon. Remember, this is the Central European time. Okay, I will now hand over control to my colleague Carmina, and she will go into the actual application form itself and run through it with you. We'll be using a test application form for this exercise, as we cannot use applications from previous rounds due to data protection rules. So I'll hand over control now to Carmina.
Okay, so right here is the application form. As I go through it, I will use the scroll bar to scroll up and down the pages to the relevant sections of the form. I will concentrate on hints and tips for each section based on previous application rounds rather than describing all the information needed. And I will then concentrate on the sections dealing with project activities and budget, showing how these link to each other. Please remember that you can find more detailed guidance on each section of the application form in our Guide for Applicants, which you can download from the same webpage where you will find the application eForm. So I will give you a brief introduction to the key features of this eForm, starting with the colors of the cells. Pre-filled sections of the form, such as in section B here, are in gray and cannot be amended in the eForm. Yellow cells in the form should be completed where possible and applicable, such as the project acronym. Mandatory sections of the form are in red, so you must complete these sections to be able to submit the eForm. So you can see on the first page in section B1, that we must provide the language used to fill out the form, which in this case should always be English when submitted the form to the UK National Agency. Okay. You can see that we must use the drop-down box to select this. The drop-down feature can be found throughout the form and in some cases appears when you click on the red cell. For example, with the start date, if we click on this cell, the drop-down arrow appears and we can select a start date from the calendar that appears. The start date for your 2018 project must be between 1st of June 2018 and 31st of December 2018. You must then select the project duration below. Ensure that the project duration selected is realistic for your project, for the project you are applying for. This is the total duration for your whole project, not just for the proposed mobilities, and will need to encompass all project related activities from the promotion through to evaluation and dissemination. Once the duration is input, you can see the end date of the project automatically populate. In section B2, you must select UK 01, United Kingdom, at the bottom of the drop-down menu. Okay. Now, I'll move on to section C, which covers the participating organizations. Here are some hints and tips. Please remember, when you input in your PIC and your PIC's numbers, the information will automatically populate from the information in the participant portal. Here, I've already entered the PIC for a test applicant organization. And here are all the details from the portal. Check the details, and if you notice that any of those are incorrect for you and your partners, you will need to correct that in the portal. If you are applying as a consortium, please select yes in section C12. Remember that all members of the consortium must be from the same program country and need to be identified at the time of applying for a grant. A consortium must comprise of at least 3 VET organizations, so that will be you and at least 2 other UK organizations. Please also make sure that all consortium members have an eligible legal form at the application stage. A better quality application will be specific in the section on each organization's background and experience, and name the key persons you'll be delivering the project and their skills. Explain how your organization's previous experience of delivering projects or activities has built the skills and knowledge needed for the activities you propose in this application. Please explain how the activities proposed in this application fit with other programs or activities you deliver. This will help the assessors understand what needs and expertise your organization has and make it easier to see the potential impact of your project on your organization. Make sure it is clear from the description of each partner's work and expertise, why they have been chosen to participate in your project. This applies to all partners, including smaller organizations which may be involved. You can see at the end of the contact person section at C15 that you're able to add a further contact person, which is recommended so that your organization can remain in contact with the UK national agency in cases where the preferred contact person is absent or unavailable. Before we move to the next page, you'll see that if you hover over the text cell, you can see the maximum number of characters you can type into the cell. As I'm demonstrating it now. And that each page of the application has a validate button, so you can check information as you go. Okay. This will identify if any mandatory sections have been missed and will highlight any errors in the way the information has been input. As you can see, the staff number are missing. So I will just input it now. Doing this will pick up all missing sections errors within the form again, as you can see that the email address is not in the correct format. Okay, actually, okay. You must be connected to the internet in order to validate the form. Now, let's scroll down to section D, European Development Plan. Okay, here we are, European Development Plan. The purpose of the European Development Plan is to ensure that the planned mobility activities are relevant both to the needs of the individual participants and of your organization as a whole. It is also to ensure that the activities will have a positive impact on the quality of teaching and learning provided by the applicant organization or consortium partners here in the UK. Finally, when completing this section, you should demonstrate that the proposed activities tie in with the organization's or consortium wider European and international strategy. Please see the guide for applicants for more information on completing this section. Now on to section E, description of the project. Here are a few hints and tips. Make sure you have a clear link with the priorities and objectives of Key Action 1, which are on page 25 to 31 of the 2018 Program Guide. You should also think about which of the general objectives for education and training are relevant. These are listed in Part B of the Program Guide. Explain the specific needs or issues your project will address based on a genuine needs analysis you or others have carried out in relation to the participants and organizations you plan to involve. Describe the specific needs of your participants and organizations and show how your project will respond to this. It is very important that you demonstrate how the learners and/or staff you will select to take part in activities will benefit directly from the project. Please note that you can select up to 3 of the most relevant topics from the drop-down menu. You can add topics by clicking on the plus button and delete them by pressing the minus button. This feature can be found in other parts of the eForm as well. Now, section F Section F covers participants' profile. Here are a few hints and tips. Again, be specific here about who your participants will be and how you will select them. For example, if you are applying for a VET learner mobility, include information on the VET course of study that your learners will be undertaking, specifically the subject and level of qualification, and how the placement will support this learning. If you're selecting staff for mobility, how will you select the most relevant staff members? We found this information unclear in applications unsuccessful in previous years. Similarly, if you're including Erasmus Pro activities, you must specify why targeted participants are suited for long-term mobility, as well as how you will select them. If you're including long-term and short-term mobilities, you should describe how the targeted participants and the selection for each type of mobility differ. This approach can also be applied to the selection of participants. Explain what the recruitment and selection processes you and your partner will undertake. For instance, state how many participants you will involve and how the process will ensure the most suitable participants are selected whilst ensuring a fair process. In the case of staff mobility, you need to carefully detail the training the staff will deliver or receive, whether your UK organization is sending or hosting staff. You should demonstrate how the training program ties in with a need analysis and your organization strategy. We recommend that you annex any specific materials related to the proposed training to the application form to strengthen your case. Make sure that the placements match participants' training and/or professional development needs as stated in this section. The participating organization should work closely together to match the selected participants with a suitable vocational placement. If applicable, address how you will ensure participants are eligible under the rules of Erasmus+. For example, in case of recently graduated VET learners, how you will ensure their placement take place in the eligible time period, which is within 12 months of graduation. Your learning outcomes must also be clearly linked to the aims of your project and relevant to the needs of your participants. This means that they must be agreed with both the learners, staff, and of the sending or receiving organizations. Participants' training and the skills acquired during the placement should be recognized, and you should consider involving European partners in the validation process. You will need to detail within the application which European and/or national instruments or certificates will be used to validate the competencies acquired by participants. As a minimum, you should use Europass, but you should also consider incorporating ECVET, the European Credit Transfer System for VET. ECVET allows you to validate the skills that participants gain whilst abroad against the knowledge, skills, and competences required to achieve a qualification at home. Now, let's have a look at section G, preparation. As indicated in the form, preparation for Erasmus Pro activities need to be detailed, if applicable. Preparation for long-term mobilities is likely to differ, so that of short-term activities and needs to be highlighted in this section. The first subsection here is section J1, practical arrangements. The specific preparation activities will depend on the objectives and activities of your particular project and the needs of your participants. However, they will include some standard elements such as arranging appropriate accommodation, transport, insurance, visas, ensuring the safety and protection of participants, explaining how participants will be mentored and supported, particularly learners, language and/or cultural preparation for participants. Practical logistical orientation, any technical or vocationally specific training or preparation before particular activities, and agreeing learning needs and objectives with participants. If Erasmus Pro activities are included in your application and you may wish to apply for advanced planning visits. If APVs are being requested, information about how the visit will be used to prepare for long-term mobilities should be included in this section. Section G2, Project Management, you should explain clearly how you will ensure that the project and the grant are managed effectively and transparently in order to deliver the planned objectives and activities to a high standard and within the time frame and budget available. You'll also need to describe how the project activities and results will be monitored and evaluated during the life of the project, and provide details of the staff who will be involved in these activities and how often quality checks will be undertaken. Address how you plan to handle risks or difficulties. For example, what processes will you use to handle conflict resolution within the partnership and to prevent selected participants dropping out of the mobilities. In subsection G3, Preparation of Participants, you will need to describe the pedagogical, cultural, and linguistic preparation that learners and staff will receive to ensure that they will be ready to live and work in a different environment and in a different country. You will need to identify whether it is the same for all participants, on short-term and long-term mobilities. Please note, for learners completing mobilities which last between 19 days and 12 months, they will need to use the European Commission's Online Linguistic Support, OLS, tool as an online platform to support language learning. With the exception of native speakers, it currently supports participants using Bulgarian, Croatian, Czech, Danish, Dutch, English, Estonian, Finnish, French, German, Greek, Hungarian, Irish, Gaelic, Italian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Maltese, Polish, Portuguese, Romanian, Slovak, Slovenian, Spanish, and Swedish as their main language of instruction, work, or study, although other languages may become available in time. I'm highlighting this point as under the 2017 call, fewer languages were available, so now OLS will apply to more projects than it used to. Therefore, please include OLS in your program of linguistic preparation where applicable and provide details on it in section G3. I will talk more about the funding available for linguistic support later. Now on to section H, main activities. This is a really important part of the application, and it is divided into 4 questions. Again, information about Erasmus Pro activities need to be detailed here too. In the first box, you'll need to include the main activities you plan to organize, providing a description of the role each project partner will play. In the second box, you need to detail what communication methods you will use with your partners and any relevant stakeholders and why. Tip: try to use SMART goals when completing the application form: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. In the third box, you need to explain what monitoring activities will take place to support your participants and who will carry this out and evaluate the participants' progress. Examples could be meetings between learners and accompanying persons each evening during a short-term mobility, participant logbooks, and regular Skype catch-ups between staff participant and their line manager back in the UK. Monitoring for a long-term Erasmus Pro activity may be completely different to that of a short-term mobility, so please ensure you make this distinction. Justification for accompanying persons should also be given in the fourth box if you are including accompanying persons. Please bear in mind that you must include accompanying persons for vet learner mobility projects. Please see the KA1 VET Guide for applicants for more information on accompanying persons. We will cover Section H1 activity details in more detail, as the data input here will feed into the budget section. It is very important to keep in mind that the data here will need to correspond to the data in the budget section. Otherwise, you will not be able to validate the eForm. The activities that you need to detail in this section are grouped under the 5 categories. Firstly, short-term mobility of VET learners. Secondly, Erasmus Pro, long-term mobility of VET learners. If you are including Erasmus Pro activities in your application, you can also apply for advanced planning visits to the host organizations. Then we have staff training abroad, and finally, teaching or training assignments abroad. And this is the activity you would select if you plan on hosting in the UK, as well as on sending your staff to train partners. You should add a table for each activity you plan to include during your project and select a number of answers from the drop-down menus available. Before I demonstrate how to complete this section, I would like to highlight a couple of points here. You will see that Serbia appears in the list of possible destination countries in Section H1, along with all other program countries with their overseas countries and territories. Serbia is displayed here because in 2017, Serbia started to implement the necessary measures to prepare for full preparation in Erasmus Plus as a program country in the coming years. However, it is not an eligible destination under Erasmus Plus actions in the field of education and training. You might have noticed at the top of the eForm, there is a special warning message in red to avoid that applicants propose any activity flow that is ineligible under the rules of Erasmus+. You will need to use the Commission's online distance calculator to fill out the distance band. A link to this is provided in the guide for applicants. The distance is from cities and towns, so choose the nearest one to your head office and the head office of your host partners. The band that comes up is the band which you will need to input in the application form. This will then automatically populate the corresponding travel unit cost in the budget section. This is a contribution towards the return journey cost. Please ensure that you put in the right distance, as this will be checked at assessment and, if incorrect, could affect the quality of the application. If the activity lasts 1 month or less, excluding travel, then you will need to be able to fill in the total duration excluding travel days field. If you have selected that activity lasts more than 1 month, then you'll need to fill the duration full month box. You will need to fill the duration extra box if you need to. For example, if participants will be traveling for 1 month and 10 days. If you require any travel days, you can enter this in the travel days box. A maximum of 2 days can be added to each mobility for traveling. Next, you need to enter the total numbers of participants for this flow. Out of a total number of participants for each flow, applicants must detail the number of participants with special needs, the number of apprentices, the number of participants with fewer opportunities, and the number of accompanying persons. The numbers identified here must add up to the total number of participants identified for the activity. This table feeds directly into Section J budget, and if it's not completed correctly, then the project budget may not be correct. So please complete these sections carefully. It is important to know that if you require accompanying persons for 60 days or longer, the additional will need to be requested under special needs support. Now I will give you a demonstration of how to complete this section. Okay. So I will start by selecting VET short-term mobility of VET learners from the drop-down menu. The United Kingdom would always be the country of origin for mobility of VET learners, so we'll select the United Kingdom as the country of origin and Finland as the country of destination. To work out the correct distance band between the UK and the partner training organization, we will switch to the distance calculator. Okay, so this is the distance calculator. The distance calculator works by you inputting the town or city that will be the point of departure and arrival for the training. Our test organization is based in Birmingham, and the receiving organization is in Valletta, Malta. As you can see, as I start to type the name of the location, the distance calculator suggests destinations. Okay. Clicking the calculate button provides the distance in kilometer, and this is the number which dictates the distance band you need to select. If you do not wish to claim any cost for travel, you have the option to select distance band 0 to 99 kilometers. I will now switch to the application form to input the information. Total duration of travel. Do not forget that short-term mobilities must last between 2 weeks and less than 3 months, so I will input 14 days. I've input a total of 5 participants, which include 2 apprentices. If your project includes participants with special needs or fewer opportunities, you should include a number of these here as well. If you plan for your accompanying person to stay for less time than the participants, then you can add another flow to this activity type with the same country of origin, country of destination, and travel band, but input a different duration. So, in total duration excluding travel, in my example here, I have one accompanying person to stay with participants for 7 days and then another to stay for the other 7 days. So I'll input 2 more flows of 7 days each for each accompanying person. Okay. In this example, I will also have an Erasmus Pro long-term mobilities of 3 to 12 months as well. I will therefore add this activity type by pressing the button Add Activity and selecting VET Long Erasmus Pro long-term mobility of VET learners from the drop-down menu. Again, the United Kingdom will always be the country of origin for mobility of VET learners, so I will select the United Kingdom as the country of origin and France as the destination country. To work out the correct distance band between the UK and the partner organization, I have used the distance calculator again, which has told me that the distance is 500 to 2,000 kilometers. Total duration excluding travel. As this is an Erasmus Pro long-term mobility, the duration must be between 3 months and 12 months long. As you can see, that I can input the duration in months and in days for this activity type. I've selected the distance band that matches the distance calculator and also included the duration of the placement activity and travel days that have been also included. So you can see we've input 2 travel days. We will then need to input the total number of participants. I've input a total of 5 participants, which include 2 apprentices. If your project includes participants with special needs or fewer opportunities, you should include a number of these here as well. I have not included my accompanying persons here, as I don't want the accompanying persons to stay for the same duration as the participants, as the accompanying person will stay for less time, and in this example for less than 3 months. The form will not allow you to put them under this activity. I will therefore need to put the accompanying person mobility under teaching, training, assignments abroad, and specify the duration. So you'll notice here that I cannot input the number of months like I would have done for Erasmus Pro activity, only the total duration, excluding travel days. Again, you can use the plus symbol to add more flows for the same activity type, even if participants are being sent to different receiving countries or from different durations. You can also press the minus symbol to remove the last flow in the list. As I have Erasmus Pro activities, I can request funds for an advanced planning visit. Please note that you can only have an APV to the host organization where the Erasmus Pro activity will take place. Any APVs to organizations where Erasmus Pro activities will not take place will not be eligible. So in this case, I can only have an AVP to Marseille in France. I can also have one participant per APV for 1 to 3 days, excluding travel days. Please note that the country of origin will always be the UK for all activity types, except when you are hosting staff in the UK under the activity type teaching, training, assignments abroad, in which case the country of origin can be the UK. You will see how inputting this information affects the budget section later on in the form. You can press the Validate button at the bottom of the page as you input the activities. If any ineligible information has been input, an error message will appear to advise you the correct activity. Please note that you have input mobilities of 19 days or more. The form will direct you to section J4, Linguistic Support, and you will then need to go back to complete section A of the eForm. For now, I'll have a look at section I. In section I, follow-up, hints and tips, be as specific as possible about the impact of the project in addressing the needs you have identified earlier in the application. The UKNA have created a model to help you think about impact, and the link to this is provided in the handout and in the guide for applicants. You need to describe the expected impact on individual participants, the participating organizations, the target group they work with, and any other relevant stakeholders. Do not forget to specify the impact of the project at local, regional, national, European, and international level. Dissemination. For dissemination, you need to show you have carefully planned your dissemination and mention your messages you want to share, what activities you will undertake to do this, and when. You should be as clear as possible who you will target with your dissemination activities. Plan for dissemination activities to take place throughout your project lifetime and not just at the end. Have a look at Annex 2 of the program guide, which provides practical guidance on dissemination of your project. Evaluation. Give specific details of the evaluation methods and indicators of achievement, qualitative and quantitative, you plan to use in order to assess whether and to what extent your project has achieved its objectives and results. You should attach numerical targets to quantitative indicators wherever possible and explain who you will be looking after this task. Don't forget your evaluation activities should consider the learning outcomes and how the project has contributed to addressing the overall aims of Key Action 1. Now on to section J, budget. Getting the budget right is an important part of the application. It is important that you have carefully considered and justified the budget requested. It is important to be aware that if the project is approved, the applicant organization will receive the grant and will be responsible for distributing it amongst the partners to ensure the effective delivery of the project. There is no maximum grant for a VET learner and staff mobility project. However, you should ensure that the budget requested meets the needs of the activities planned and is realistic. All budget costing are for sending participants, except under the activity teaching training assignments abroad only, where you can claim costs to host a teacher or trainer to provide structured training to VET staff. There are two funding mechanisms under Key Action 1 VET Mobility. Unit costs are a set amount per participant, which is a contribution towards the cost. And on the other hand, actual costs means that you receive funding for how much you've actually planned to spend. Actual costs are used for the budget heading exceptional costs and special needs support and can be fully or partially reimbursed. The budget categories for a Key Action 1 VET learner and staff mobility project are travel, individual support, organizational support, linguistic support, which is not available for VET staff mobilities, special needs support, exceptional costs, including expensive travel costs of participants. As you can see, most of the information has been pre-filled based on the information we've already entered in the activity details section and pressed the validate button at the bottom of the eForm. Under travel, individual support and organizational support, the budget is calculated on a unit cost basis. Your request for the funding in travel section J1 should reflect the main activities you've detailed in section H1. In section J2, you will need to check the request for individual support. This is a contribution to the subsistence costs of participants during their activity. Costs are calculated on a unit cost basis per participant, depending on the type of activity, the duration, and the country where the activity will take place. In section J3, you need to check the request for organizational support, that is money to be used for the organization, management, and implementation of your mobilities or main activities. Once again, most of this information has been pre-filled from the activity details section. You will need to check here that the pre-filled information is correct and if not, amend section H1. Linguistic support. Okay. Linguistic support, this will only become available to complete if you include VET learner mobilities in section H and if the duration of the VET mobilities is 19 days or more. If the linguistic assessment section, in the linguistic assessment section, you'll need to indicate how many participants will use the language which are offered by OLS language. If the project is approved, then these participants will need to undertake language assessments before and after the mobility abroad through OLS. Unit cost funding may be available for the linguistic support offered to participants prior to departure or during the activity. There are two scenarios. Placement lasting between 19 days and 12 months using either one of the languages that OLS can support you with. These are called Group 1 languages. Participants are required to use the OLS tool and licenses, which will be allocated by the UK National Agency if your project is successful. You will be awarded no unit cost here, as support will be provided via the OLS. Funding from organizational support should be used to absorb any additional cost incurred. Placements lasting between 19 days and 12 months, not using any of the OLS languages. This will be Group 2. Participants should have some language training provided as part of their preparation activities. Once you input the number of participants using these languages, the application will allocate a unit cost of €150 per participant. This is payable to enable you to arrange linguistic preparation, for example, hiring a language tutor. For placements less than 19 days in any language, no unit cost is payable, and in fact, the linguistic support section doesn't even appear in the application. Funding from the organizational support should be able to absorb any cost incurred to prepare participants in the language with which they will train or work. In section H1, I input one learner mobility that lasted more than 90 days, and this was to France, which is a Group 1 language. Therefore, under section J41, linguistic assessment, the number of participants will do their mobility using one of these languages. I will input 1. Under section J42 for language courses, I need to input under number of participants for language learning as 1 under Group 1 and input 0 into language course Group 2. If you had a Group 2 language, the funding, €150 per participant for a language outside of Group 1 would appear. However, we only have a Group 1 language. There is no cost reflected in this section. Section J allows you to request any special needs support. This is any cost that your organization or any partners will incur in relation to participants whose physical, mental, or health-related situation is such that their participation in the project would not be possible without extra financial support. For example, special needs funding could fund specialist equipment that one of your participants will need specifically to participate in the mobility activities. Special needs support is calculated on an actual cost basis and will be assessed case by case. Therefore, it is important that you make it clear in the description of cost box what items you need and the cost breakdown. You should also detail the inclusion of special needs participants in the main narrative of the application. Section J5, exceptional costs are to be budgeted as actual costs, and you need to clearly state in the description of cost box why you need these items and the cost breakdown. Under K1 mobility project for vet learners and staff, you can request exceptional costs funding for 3 areas. Additional costs to support the participation of learners with fewer opportunities, excluding costs for travel and individual support, costs connected to providing a financial guarantee if the national agency asks for it. Under the 2018 call, you can request funding to cover domestic travel costs, which exceed €225 because the point of departure in the country of origin and or the final destination are particularly remote from main transport hubs. If you need to request this top-up, you need to provide a full justification in your application form. You can request €180 per participant affected. Please note that only a certain percentage of the exceptional costs you are budgeting for will be covered by the EU funding. For instance, for expensive travel costs for participants, the EU grant will cover up to 80% of the actual cost. Be careful and note that in the application form, you should enter the grant amount requested corresponding to the percentage allowed. For example, for expensive travel costs, you need to cover maximum 80% of the total cost you have calculated. It is important to note that the EU grant will only cover 75% of the actual costs for instances associated with the provision of financial guarantees. To reiterate a general piece of advice on the budget, make sure you have clearly described the main activities of your project and that the budget you request is consistent with your description, because budget requests can only be accepted if it is clear what the money is being requested for. At the end of this section, there is a yellow box which asks you to input any comments about the requested budget. You should justify any request for special needs and exceptional costs here. Now, section K. Section K asks you to provide a summary of your project. This summary will be used by the Commission and the national agency in their publications and will also feed into the Erasmus Plus project results dissemination platform. So it should be written in clear, plain English, avoiding any technical or sector-specific jargon to ensure that it can be understood by the general public. Section K1 and K2 give a summary of participant organizations, activities, participants, and the project total grant. Please check these sections carefully and ensure that the information is absolutely correct so you can make any necessary changes if it is not. Also refer to section L, the checklist, to ensure that you have completed all the actions needed to submit an eligible application form. Please also ensure that you have read section M, which is the data protection notice. Now onto section N, Declaration of Honor, and O, Annexes. Compulsory annexes are the signed Declaration of Honor, and only if you are applying on behalf of a UK mobility consortium, you will have to annex the mandates for your UK consortium partners, signed by both the consortium members and the applicant. The Declaration of Honor is section N itself. This is the organization statement that all information in the application is correct to the best of your knowledge, there is no conflict of interest, and you will take part in the dissemination and exploitation activities if required. It expresses a commitment to the activities you have outlined in the application form. The legal representative of the applicant organization must print the declaration, read it carefully, complete the declaration section by hand and sign it. Please note here that the national ID and organization stamp are not required in the UK for VET applicants. The signed declaration then needs to be scanned and attached as an annex before the application form is submitted online. Your project application will be deemed ineligible without the declaration, so please do not forget it. Please also make sure that the date is before or on the submission deadline. The mandate template can be downloaded from the key document section of your Apply for VET Learners and Staff Mobility Funding page on the Erasmus Plus website. You need to ensure that the information is identical to that of the participant portal. Mandates need to be signed and dated in original by the partner organization and the applicant. Electric or scanned signatures will not be accepted. You will also be able to attach other relevant annexes such as training needs analysis, which would be good supporting information should you plan a hosting or training activity, and the sample work program. A hint and tip here is to keep it concise. We expect all the information that is key to the quality and content of your project should be included within the main body of the application form. Now, a few final words on section P, submission. Validate as you go and after completing the application. You'll be taken to any sections that are incorrect or have been missed. This will need to be resolved before you can submit the form. Ensure you are connected to the internet when you submit. Save the final completed version of your application form to your PC in case of any submission issues. Note that the deadline mentioned in the form is Brussels time. The form needs to be submitted online by 11 a.m. UK time on 1st of February 2018. We would advise you to leave plenty of time in completing your application and then submitting it online before the deadline in case of any unexpected technical difficulties. So, talking about technical difficulties, if there are any technical issues preventing the form from being submitted, the form will say error under status. If this happens and you are unable to submit the form, you should follow the alternative submission procedure outlined in our guide for applicants. This asks you to take a screenshot of the submission summary page demonstrating that the e-form could not be submitted online. Then you'll also need to send your application and annexes via email to us within the 2 hours following the official deadline, so by 1 p.m. UK time. However, be aware that we will only accept this submission if the error message is recorded under status in the submission summary section of the e-form with a timestamp prior to or on the deadline date and time. There are some error messages that are not accepted as technical issues, so if you follow the alternative submission procedure for these errors, your application will be deemed ineligible. So, what are these errors? And don't worry if you cannot note them all down. They are detailed in our guide for applicants. Error 01, which relates to invalid data, missing fields in the e-form. This is not considered to be a technical issue and can be corrected by completing the application form correctly and validating it again. Error 06, which means that there are errors with the annexes. The total size of the attachments exceeds 5 megabytes or they are not in the accepted file format. This can be rectified either by reducing the size of the attachments or by removing them and reattaching it in the correct format. Unknown, this means that the e-form was not submitted and no submission attempts were made. If local 01, Adobe Reader Security enabled appears, in order to submit the e-form, you must click the appropriate options in the yellow security warning bar at the top of the form. If local 02 network connection error appears, you need to check your internet connection and try to submit the form again or try a different network.
Okay, so that is the application form. Many thanks to Carmina for running through that. So we will just take a minute to answer any questions that you may have about completing the form. We've received quite a few already, so many thanks for that. Then we should go through what happens after you have submitted your e-form. Okay, for the final poll of the session, we will be asking the following question. Is your organisation ready to submit an application? So it's a simple question. It's either yes or no. Okay, once again, is your organisation ready to submit an application? Either yes or no. Okay, we'll be closing the poll now. And here are the following results. So it's 90% yes and 10% no. We do strongly recommend that when you complete the form that you read the guidance alongside the form. Completing your application, it is also worthwhile asking someone else to read your proposal to ensure it makes sense and that all the questions are answered in full. Finally, we also recommend reading the 2017 Guide for Assessors to look at how your application will be assessed, to again check that you have covered all points. Remember, you can add annexes to strengthen your application too. So after submission and after the deadline has passed, we complete some preliminary checks on your application. Your application will be deemed ineligible and will not go forward to assessment if it does not meet any of the eligibility criteria specified in the 2018 Programme Guide for Key Action 1 VET Mobility Projects. These are on pages 50 to 52. I have put some examples on this slide, but remember that this is not the full list. So, your application won't be eligible if your planned activities are not eligible under a Key Action 1 VET. For example, you submit a Key Action 1 VET application to send primary school teachers to France so they can learn French to teach primary school children. Or you submit two different application proposals as a single UK applicant, though you can submit one application as a single applicant and a different one as the lead of a national UK consortium. Your application won't go through to qualitative assessment if your organisation as applicant has no legal personality in the UK. In the programme guide, it is stated that an applicant must be any public or private organisation or its subsidiary branch active in the field of VET, or the lead of a national VET consortium. Please be aware that if you apply, you will have to be able to evidence that your VET organisation is legally registered in the UK and has a separate legal personality, which means there is a legal distinction between the owner and the business. And also, obviously, your application will not be eligible if you submit it after 11 AM on the 1st of February 2018. Please make sure that you read the programme guide and the national agency guidance available on our website for further details on the eligibility requirements before you submit your application. Once the national agency is satisfied that your application is eligible, it will arrange for it to be assessed by external experts from a qualitative point of view against the award criteria published on page 53 of the programme guide. From the slide, you can see there are 3 award criteria. An application can score a maximum of 100 points. In order for your application to be considered for funding, an application must score a minimum of 60 points in total and must receive at least half of the maximum points for each award criteria. Each criterion has subpoints which you need to really pay attention to. So please read more about these in the 2018 programme guide and in our guide for applicants. We also recommend that you look at the 2017 Guide for Erasmus Plus Assessors to see in more detail how your application will be considered during its assessment. All of the relevant links to these documents are in the handout to this webinar. As explained at the beginning of this webinar, the inclusion of Erasmus Plus long-term activities, which consists of mobilities of 3 months to 12 months, will be assessed under all 3 of the award criteria as a priority. Please note that as part of the assessment process, the national agency will also check that the requested budget is in line with the funding rules set out in Part B of the programme guide. If these rules are not respected, your requested budget may be reduced. During the qualitative assessment process, applications will also be assessed against other relevant areas. Applicants will need to comply with the exclusion criteria, which can be found in the 2018 programme guide. This criteria includes situations such as being bankrupt or participating in criminal activities. An applicant will be excluded from participating in the call for proposals or will be rejected from the award procedure if it is found in one of the situations described within the criteria. The selection criteria includes operational capacity and financial capacity. In terms of operational capacity, applicants need to demonstrate that they have the capacity to successfully deliver Erasmus Plus projects and administer them in accordance with the grant agreement and the 2018 programme guide. The assessment of organisational capacity will consider elements like the roles of staff involved in delivering the planned project and the past history of the applicant in delivering EU-funded projects. An outcome of this analysis may be that the UK National Agency may limit the number of live projects and organisation managers at any one time if it doesn't evidence sufficient organisational capacity to successfully deliver them. In terms of financial capacity, as you know, Erasmus Plus projects are co-funded and the Erasmus Plus grants may not cover all costs. Projects must be delivered and reported using only a pre-financing payment or an advance. Therefore, applicants must have stable and sufficient sources of funding to complete the project. The UK National Agency doesn't complete a financial capacity check on public bodies and international organisations or where the grant request doesn't exceed €60,000. When planning your project, remember that each project financed by the European Union is entitled to receive only one grant from the EU budget to any one beneficiary. In cases where organisations are also receiving funding from other sources to deliver similar activities, it is the responsibility of the applicant to ensure that they remain compliant with the relevant funding rules, including those in relation to double funding, which are detailed in Part C of the programme guide. Finally, where the same or very similar applications are submitted by different applications or consortia, they will be subject to a specific assessment and may be all rejected. All applications should be unique to the organisations and participants involved in the project. Erasmus Plus national agencies will be validating your organisation and your partner organisations. This is a separate process to the assessment of your application. Therefore, the fact that your organisation has been validated does not automatically imply a successful outcome for your application. During the validation process, the UK National Agency will check whether all the information you have put into the participant portal is complete and correct. We will check whether the required legal and financial forms have been uploaded, as well as any of the necessary supporting documents. More information about this can be found in Part C of the programme guide, starting on page 245. Your UK consulting partners will also need to be validated by the UK National Agency. Please therefore ensure that your partners have uploaded all of the necessary documents to the participant portal to prevent delays to this process. Please note that organisations that are not valid cannot take part in Erasmus Plus funded projects. If you or your partners cannot provide the correct and fully completed documents during the validation process, there may be significant delays to the processing of your application, and the National Agency may even have to withdraw its offer of funding if your application is successful. So, before we conclude, some key points for you to remember. Before and while you complete your application, refer to the European Commission's documents. First of all, the 2018 Programme Guide, the National Agency's Guide for Applicants, and other guidance documents is available on our website. If you have applied before, don't forget to review the feedback you have received from us, as this will include key areas of improvement which will enhance your chances of submitting a good quality application. Save the form frequently so no information is lost. Ensure correct options are selected on the application form so that important sections aren't deleted. As stated previously, while looking through the application form, double check that the budget you request is accurate and well justified. Provide relevant answers to the questions in the application, but remember that there is a character limit on many of the sections. You can see the limit by hovering your mouse over the answers boxes. Get someone else to proofread your application and annexes, perhaps against the published award criteria. Leave enough time for completing and submitting your application before the deadline of the 1st of February 2018. To conclude, I'd like to point out the further support that is available. A detailed Key Action 1 Vet guide for applicants on how to fill out and submit the application form is available on our Erasmus Plus website. There is a guide for each action type that we manage, so make sure you check the correct one. The link to the page where you can find the vet guide is in the handout to this webinar and will be placed in the chat box now. If you haven't done so already, please sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the call and the Erasmus Plus programme. On our website, you can also find other important information and key documents to support you with completing your application. We also have a UK National Agency helpline where our team is available to answer your questions about your Key Action 1 application. This webinar will be published on YouTube soon, and you should receive the link to this once it is available before the end of the week. So thank you for your attention. We'll be around for a couple more minutes to answer any final questions, and if there are any more that come up, please contact us via the erasmusplus@icorus.com email address or the number on screen. As said, our team is also available every day from Monday to Friday to answer any questions you may have via the erasmusplus@icorus.com inbox or our helpline. You can see the number on screen and you can find it in your handouts as well. Do also keep an eye on the UK National Agency Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance. We hope you found this session useful today, and we wish you luck with your future applications.